True wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about ourselves, life, and the world around us. It was a quote by Socrates, who is the subject of my discussion today. He was labeled as the father of philosophy, known mainly for his ways of critical thinking and the advancements he did in the type of thinking. He analyzed his thoughts and questioned, which outside from his birthplace of Greece, this was not known to many. This was thought of as blasphemous to question authority, to question natural ways of thinking, to question in general. He revolutionized the way of thinking. He gave us an opportunity to not only question and analyze, but to not accept things for what they were. An outstanding innovator, he was an orator, and essentially his legacy came about through his death, but not so much his death, but how he handled it at the last time. I chose Socrates because of the way he fits in to this course and the other three courses I'm taking at Ocean County. Aside from philosophy and speech, I'm also taking world literature. And Socrates just seemed to be the quintessential ideal of all three of those classes. Strong minds discuss ideas, average minds events, and weak minds discuss people. Another one of Socrates' quotes, which is this is how I'm going to start each one of my sections, because I think his quotes were so influential. Notably, his greatest achievement was sculpting in the way we think and solve problems. Not ideally do we take a problem and dissect it and look into it and question it. Sometimes we just take things for what they are. And this was in complete opposition to what Socrates believed. He left us with the Socratic method, which is the analyzation and deductive reasoning of thinking. He basically took everything out of what was being said, eliminated what he didn't believe, and only chose those things he believed only through fact and truth. He eliminated the contradiction in most of his findings, and again, he dove into what was actually true and what things he can prove before electing to choose what he was being told. Again, in those times, this was unprecedented. Most people accepted things for what they were, and this was in contradiction to any of his authorities. His second greatest achievement, in my view, stemmed from critical thinking, which is huge now in the college atmosphere. This is something where a trend an ideology that you just don't accept things for what they are, but you dive into them a little bit more. You think about it, you analyze what you're being told, and you make up your own mind. You're given one thought, and out of that one thought, you derive many. This was not to be questioned. Things in his days weren't to be questioned. We don't have the same, or they didn't have the same democracy we had now. They had only the foundation of it. Today, it's a lot more complicated, a lot more intricate. So, trying to understand someone like Socrates nowadays is a little bit more difficult because we don't understand the time that he lived in. But his ideologies still today resonate. They tend to be the foundation of what we have as a democracy today, which is don't accept things for what they are, but question them, question authority. We have that right in a democratic government. Civil freedom of choice, freedom of speech, these are all foundations of a democratic government. So many of Socrates' influences still reign today. They're pretty strong. Unfortunately, his greatest achievement, which was that freedom of speech and choice, was what defined his death, or was the catalyst for his death. At the age of 70, Socrates was brought before a tribunal in Greece, and the fact that he was outspoken and contradicted authority was not to the government's liking, not to the council's liking. So they brought him up before charges, trumped up charges. They brought him up on charges of corrupting the youth and believing in different gods, things of that nature. Um, his legacy wasn't so much what he did throughout his life, but the way he died. Here's a man preaching equality and preaching self awareness and looking within and questioning authority. And at his trial, Socrates had a choice. He had a choice of being exiled or being put to death. Ironically, like I said before, he lived his life in this method, so obviously he chose death. He chose death because he would choose his principles and his morality before living. He even had a chance to escape where his followers, his most truest of followers, actually bribed the guards where he was being kept during his trial, and he decided not to escape when the guards were giving money and giving him the opportunity to leave. He still chose to stand firm before death. Unlike Galileo, who at that time too was questioned and was thought to be blasphemous by his government, and he was also given the choice of exile, and he chose it. Socrates, in retrospect, chose to stand firm to his beliefs, which made his legacy even bigger today than before. He parted with these words: "But now the time has come, and we must go away. I to die, and you to live. Whether life or death is better is known only to God, and to God only." Again, ironically, Socrates was epitomized by those who condemned him, and in the end, so the ones that put him to trial were the ones who were singing his praises after his death. How can you not respect a man that would not give up his beliefs or his morality um, for freedom? We've had many pioneers, Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King, that again stood true to their beliefs, but here's a man 2,500 years ago who decided to choose death in lieu of being exiled. He left us with many things. His legacy is thorough and very intricate, but there were a few things that he did leave us with that 2,500 years later we still use them every day. He left us with examining truths and looking at views from multiple angles. Socrates would have been a modern day lawyer or a great speech giver like President Obama. He never opposed the truth, even when that meant disproving what he believed in. This was something, again, known as radical. So you're firm on what you believe, but you investigate it further to find the truth, and that will actually lead you to changing your opinion of something. He left us with a chance to look inside our lives and find life living. And the last quote is, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And that is my report on Socrates.